Hey, good afternoon. This is Tabasco, the sophisticated biker, and this is Garage Therapy. I'm gonna do some house cleaning to start with. Number one, I don't know what the hell's wrong with my voice. It's been that way for about 2-3 weeks, ever since Mrs. Tabasco had to go to the hospital because she was ill, and I think she's called off about 2 sick days in the 18 years I've known her. So it's been a very busy time, and in fact, we're going to be relocating and kind of condensing our efforts so we can focus more on her health. And that also affects that we will get back to lives and the production that I have, the pain train, and my comrades in the wind will be rejoining at some point. I just got to get things settled down first. The voice is shot because I'm on the phone about 10 hours a day talking to contractors and all kinds of stuff, getting the house up, prepared to go to market. And we're actually going to be consulting a little bit. I'll be building a new studio, and then we'll be hopefully buying some land and building our own thing, which is pretty exciting. So, hey, out of challenge comes triumph, right? That's what we do. And let me also, answer some questions from some viewers. And some of the posts that I have put out, they've been questioned, and rightfully so, because they don't know my history. If they would take the time to go to our website, which is the sophisticatedbiker.com, which is a social media or a social community website, membership site. Is a free version as well. If you want to use ChatGPT and mess around with that, I think it's like $5 a month total. And we cover the bill to provide that. And what we really wanted to do is create a social community for many reasons. One is to share information with regard to the motorcycle life. I mean, there's so much education is being lost by the old timers that, I mean, even in Evo is not even taught anymore. So really wanted to provide a platform that motorcycle enthusiasts could come to, share information. We have we try to post national events. We do multiple articles in several different genres. We do motorcycle travel, motorcycle events. We do a she shed section where we highlight a woman's contribution to the motorcycle community entirely on their own. And I'd like to build that up even more. And we're always open for participation. We have the clubhouse section where we discuss, the lifestyle in general, and then also some club life. But we also cover a racing section. So we'll do ATV campsites, things like that. You can take your family to. We also just talk about bagger racing, even some motocross, drags. So all things motorcycle, and we hope to continue to grow the brand. It would be wonderful that more people would join the website. It's sophisticatedbiker.com, and check it out. We also have a section where I'm posting the blogs. I'm getting ready to tune it again. I switch it up every now and then just to make it interesting. I feel it's a good product. It's been well received. I was providing ChatGPT in every section of the magazine. We were doing a flip book style, but really it didn't optimize well on mobile devices. So we opted to just go to the website version of a digital magazine, which is what most of them do. And we have, like I said, we have all kinds of stories in there. We post all the stories as a blog, the articles, so that we can optimize search engine optimization. And it's a really neat community. Having said that, when we discussed the clubhouse section, so for over a decade, I wrote a monthly article in a travel and event motorcycle magazine, and I covered it from the club perspective. Some people have asked, well, who are you to speak about club life? You're not in a club. Well, first of all, club life doesn't necessarily require a patch. That sounds like an oxymoron, but what I can tell you is it's a lifestyle. It's not a patch. It's not a vest. It's not a cut. It's a lifestyle. And you know what I mean? If you know, you know. If you live the life, and I'm not talking about just being a biker, it's about being a clubber. There's a big difference between a biker and a clubber. A biker is someone who wants to ride free. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the freedom of the open road, freedom of the wind. A club member or a clubber is a biker who wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And not, again, that's not to suggest there's anything wrong with being a biker. A clubber will sacrifice his money, his time, his energy, his intelligence, his resources, his fists, whatever is required for the betterment of the entire body of the club, not just themselves. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it used to be. That's not always the way it is, obviously. We've seen, if you're in the club life, you know what I mean. But unfortunately, every walk of life has its heroes and villains. It has its thieves in the night, has its narcissists and its egomaniacs and its bullies. It doesn't matter if it's business, personal, really anything when you involve more than like 5 people, I think you'll end up with some sort of a disagreement. But the life in the club life, to qualify myself to some people, and I don't know if I should put up if anybody would actually, people that comment, if they'd actually go and look at the website or do a little bit of research on multiple blogs and articles that we've written, they would see that, the guys that helped me put this together are all active or former clubbers. We're talking, they have held positions in the top nations of the world. Some, there's depends on what club you're in, I suppose, or where you're from. But there are clubs that are considered the top 7. They're always mentioned in the top 7, and they know who they are, and I don't need to mention them. And some of these guys were leaders in those clubs. And I say were because they may have gone to a vacation, provided by, the kidnappers who cage 90% of our people here in the United States because they can, for the American injustice system, or they are currently leaders in positions of clubs. What you will not ever, usually, unless it's an accident, slips by somebody, you will never hear us mention another club, because I'm not down with that. You don't talk about other clubs. The club life has a code, and it's a code of respect, even for your adversaries. Most importantly, because your adversaries may be your friend down the road, and it sounds silly, but it's absolute truth. And again, if you're in the life and you've been in the life, you know what I'm talking about. We have had clubs that were listed and still are listed on like onepercenter.com, things like that had listed clubs as our mortal enemy, and perhaps they were 25 or 30 years ago. They don't update that shit. So they have no idea the alliances or friendships we've made since then and what we've been through. So you can't really trust any of those sites. Most of them are run by feds, and that's a hypocrisy, but we won't go down that road. The biggest, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest gang in the world is government. I mean, period. It doesn't matter if it's just the American injustice system. I mean, here's a system that's supposed to be providing for the people, completely designed as a servitude organization who basically have hijacked it. Everyone knows it. It's mainstream media. It's mainstream conversation, and nobody's doing anything about it. My opinion to that is the only people who can would be the states. The states have to come together and get a 2/3 vote to require Congress. But again, I think Congress gets to vote on it. An addendum or amendment. Well, the problem with that is you got the fox watching the hen house, right? And then they own the judicial system, so we find ourselves not guilty, but we always find the citizens guilty. And then on top of that, we're just going to go ahead and send our thugs over to kidnap you and put you in cages for the next 10 years. And we're going to make money off that while we do it. It's just absolutely nothing more than profiteering, and it was by design to do nothing more than to fill their pockets. It has been admitted and proven many times. If you don't know, you ain't paying attention, and that's a you problem, not a me problem. So, but my qualifications, they matter to people, and they do, because nothing irritates me more than listen to a citizen talk about a life they know nothing about, or very little. You can't watch it on TV and know. Sons of Anarchy, that and the Mayans and them, I didn't really enjoy them because I was actually out busy during those times. I mean, for years, living the life. And it's a cartoon of anything. It's just like the Dr. Dreamy shows that Mrs. Tabasco watches. I mean, they are they're a character exaggeration or a caricature of like real life. Hospitals are full of nothing but bickering and drama at every level. And that's exasperated when you put it on these TV shows. That's why they're all sleeping together and they're all doing this and this one's gay. Now they're not gay. Now they're gay. Now they're married. Now they're, it's an exaggeration of real life. Same with the Mayans and the Sons of Anarchy. They are multi-$100 million franchises. Why? Because people in the motorcycle community have a curiosity of the motorcycle lifestyle. Many didn't find themselves in a place where they could join. Perhaps they hung around, perhaps they know some people, or had some family or friends join. What my qualifications would be that I came up in that life. And again, I don't know if I got to put some precursor on every video, and I probably won't, because I don't really give a fuck anyway what anybody says or thinks of me anyway. But I was born into the club life because my first membership card to the Columbus Aces Motorcycle Club was in 1969, the day I was born, and because my father was the president, and another member of another club was there when I was born, it's a 57-year-old club now. He's retired, but he was there the day I was born. And if you read any of our articles when it comes to the Aces, which is a story I tell about that lifestyle of growing up with uncles that were named Fire Clown and Gut and Strut and Rudy, and all these guys that were my uncles who were all club members. Machine guns and guitar cases. We had a farmhouse in Central Ohio, but back in the day, it was like out there in the country, and again, big parties and bonfires, and I could. Well, you'll have to read the story as I go. I'm running a little behind on that, getting it caught up because there's so much going on in our lives right now with trying to kind of shift and readapt. I wasn't expecting this, but it's a good opportunity for us to potentially get a very large return on an investment and then be able to reinvest that in ourselves, our future, and also the business. So that's it's just a lot of work. It doesn't come without a lot of work. I have been working 100 hours a week, 7 days a week for well over a year, and that's not an exaggeration. It takes that much. And really, we're only at like 80,000 followers. But I didn't have a bunch of money to dump into marketing. But I did not join the club that I was initially born to, because by the time it got around, in the 80s when I graduated and things like that, they weren't around. I had kids, relatively young, got married young, and then continued I raised the kids. I had a couple of marriages there and had kids and raised them. My commitment was to my kids because I did not have the standard lifestyle. I had a very different lifestyle than many, but not everyone. So there was a lot of things going on in our life, and the kids weren't always the priority or ever the priority, and still aren't, to some in the family. But, I wanted to break that. My old man, I talk about him, Lightning, in the series with the Aces. You know what? I mean, he came up hard, man. I came up less hard, but still hard. And I wanted my kids to have the opportunities that we had to fight for. I mean, I basically every day since I don't even remember, I've been fighting for the next day. Nothing comes easy, but it makes you work harder. It makes you appreciate more what you have. I don't think you're ever satisfied or you ever feel safe or secure that it's going to be there tomorrow, because it never was promised, even from childhood. Those are my psych issues, so we'll leave that alone. ChatGPT already says I need to see a shrink, but I waited till later. I didn't join a club until later, when my kids were at least of the age that they could somewhat be left. With like their sister was older and 17, 16, 17 before she went to college. So I was able to afford it. And then I met Mrs. Tabasco, and she afforded me the ability to go be what I needed to be. So I had spent almost 20 years in Patches, and I say patches because there were transitions. I've seen some videos. I'm going to cover some of these subjects whenever I get back things square again, where I can get online. But I say patches because sometimes your life is an evolution. Not all of us are fortunate enough to find that one club and it works out forever. But the evolution of my path with starting out with a very well-known international club, it was relatively new. It was only maybe 4 years old when I joined. I probably was the third generation leadership in that club. And as often happens, and if you're in the life, you know, there's sometimes an expedited process to the top because things just fall that way. So I was the president of the World Mother Chapter of a very well-known organization with ties to an even bigger organization, one of the oldest. Um, so I learned quick, I learned hard and fast. But I also at that point had several decades of training just in my life. It's not training for a job. It's not training for a weekend warrior to climb a mountain. It is your life. So to me, and it resonated with others who are about it because they obviously tell. You can tell right off the bat if somebody knows if they're learning to, they're coming to a new life or it has been their life. You can just tell. You know, it's much like anything else. It wouldn't matter if it's sports or racing or whatever. You just know that they know because. And I met people through this platform, and I follow a few, and I know they know what they're talking about. It's not. It seems like it's a praise or that guy's righteous. That's the way everyone should be. It's just not. It shouldn't be a reward to be righteous. That should be expected. But unfortunately, you know what? It's often seldom delivered. So is that like a double negative? Often seldom. But so I spent some number of years as the top guy of a World Mother Chapter and I helped open multiple chapters, United States, the overseas chapters, Germany, everything else. I was fortunate enough to counsel with some very, very high ranking, I mean, the highest ranking members of the sister club as well, which again is one of the oldest in the world that you would know. And I was very fortunate. I mean, I was because not only did I have just the acknowledgement and or training, it's not really training when it's just your life, but I had the life of a couple of decades prior to even coming to the organization that I went to and joined. And then, everything doesn't always work out. Sometimes people are playing checkers when you're playing chess. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes people make things change. That's one thing you always say, and everything is change is constant. So when things are the way they are and they were good, something comes along, fucks it all up, usually a human being. And it was the same thing, driven by greed and driven by the same thing that ruined this entire planet from day one. It was that, some underhanded stuff was attempted, and I'm not the one. And I made it very clear at that time. That doesn't mean I don't have friendships today at the highest level and have had relationships, and it's been hot and cold. I mean, sometimes I think I know that, they'd like to see me go away. Or they would have liked to see me go away, but at the other time they would have liked to join them. And we had clubs that we had difficulties with, or let's say intense fellowship with, and who had later were wearing our patch. I mean, so it's odd that it's not that odd. You are cut from the same cloth. I always say the clubbers, no matter what club you're in, we're all the same. From the island of misfit toys. We're the same. We just wear a different cloth. That's all. But most of our habits, most of our thought processes are the same. Unfortunately, there's a lot of egos in a lot of those, and a lot of bullies. And I don't tolerate bullies. I never have, never will, and I'm rarely, if ever, have ever been the victim of a bully past about the age of 7, because I have no problem striking first if I feel threatened or people around me, because that's just the way it is. There ain't no points for second place. So I was taught that at a very young age. The whole thing, well, he hit me first. You're damn right I did, because I don't like to get hit first. It's happened. I ain't won every battle, I can tell you that, in my life. And nowadays I don't heal as well. But even the organizations that I have had or have had issue with me, I can tell you that I know for a fact that they respected me nonetheless. Because if you don't respect your enemy, and there's been a one or two times in a 20-year almost career history with the patch, with the club in a servitude position. I say that because I'm not a narcissist, like most or many are. I wasn't the president. I was serving as the president. The president's a position, not a person. They forget that real quick, some of these guys. And then they get their yes men and their lickers, their bootlickers around them. And they all think they're something special. And they ain't, because you know what? You might be the biggest bully for a minute, but you ain't the biggest. There's always a bigger bully. And like Mr. Black said, if you're going to go, if you go into a room thinking, you're the smartest guy in the room, you already showed that you're not. And if you go in a room as a bully, you better make sure before you go in that room that you're the biggest bully in the room, because oftentimes you're not. So we've seen that over and over. So I spent a good number of years with a very large club in a very top position, and also then allowed me to counsel with people that were in bigger clubs and bigger positions, really. And I was fortunate to have that, because it's my interest, it's my life, and I'm always about. Most of my guys I ran with, honestly, were 20 years plus older than me, because I absorbed everything. In fact, when we came to Florida, I literally moved to an area, because we were kind of traveling on the fifth wheel, intentionally, that held, two of the longest wearing patch members in the club for almost 50 years, because I wanted my time with them. I'm glad I did, because one ended up being my best friend and passed away, 5 years in, relatively young, early mid 60s. And we didn't expect it, and was gone in 3 weeks. And it was just like, shit happens like that. But again, this man had started at 17 years old and had 49 years in the patch. And I talked to him 3 times a day. And if I didn't call him, he'd be like, "What'd you do, lose my number?" And if I called him twice, he'd be like, "Man, you got no other friends to call?" I mean, he was wonderful. More information, and more power in his pinky finger. And not just with our club. I'm talking other big clubs who respected this man, revered him, because he had so many years. And back in the day, they were an egregious bunch. But again, what all this means is the knowledge that you're given, right? The knowledge you pick up on. It's your duty, in my opinion. It's your duty when you join the club, and you were agreed to be about something bigger than yourself, that you will pass that knowledge down. That is their legacy. And that's what I've always done. I do not mention club names because again, I was taught differently. You don't talk about other clubs. And you don't throw name drop. The club I was talking about, the first one, was the first biggest one. Years later, when I was I'm serving as a even higher ranking person in a club very similar to them. Again, sometimes it's an evolution to get where you're going. And I basically needed, I was in an area, we were living in an area, I didn't have a lot of resources. I didn't know anybody. I knew this club, and it's, again, the very club that I came from, and the family that I came from originally. And I had a bike exhaust issue or something, I think. Anyway, I didn't know anybody down there. And I said, so I called their chapter president. I'm like, "Hey, man, I need to go to this funeral, and, I can get my bike up. I don't know anybody. Can you refer somebody?" And he did. And I took it over there. And at like 10 o'clock the next morning, I got a call, bike was done, because they'd worked on it all night to get it. And I didn't need it till like the day after that. And so when he called me and told me my bike was done, he said, "Hey, man, you didn't tell me who you are." And I said, "Yeah, I did. I told you who I am with the club I was in." And at that time, I wasn't at the highest level when I hung my patch and left. He said, "No, you didn't tell me who you were." He said, he goes, "I made a call." Obviously, somebody calls, another club that had, I had been invited down there and to their clubhouse as well, because they know our club well. Anyway, he said, I said, "Why, is there a problem?" He said, "No." He goes, "No, man." He goes, "You just didn't tell me who you were in our organization." I said, "You mean who I used to be?" I don't go around telling people who I used to be. I tell you who I am today. it's for you if it's even necessary to figure out how I used to be, because it doesn't even matter. We live in the here and now. We don't live in the future or the past. We only live in the moment. So what does it matter? He said, man, he goes, I just didn't know. He goes, I said, well, how would you? You know, I know for a fact that some of your highest ranking officers or people in certain areas, they know the name, but they don't know the person. I've had them sit right next to me. I've literally had them sitting right next to me in clubhouse, our own clubhouses, asking for talking about me to me and or to another member. There's a couple of members around me that were, ranking, and they're literally talking, and I'm like, I didn't say a word, man. I just like, oh yeah, I don't know. Well, they said, well, if you see him, let me, whatever, tell me. I said, yeah, okay. Well, if I see him, I'll tell you. And it wasn't anything bad, but it's just there's no point in it. I wasn't looking for fame and fortune. You sure as hell ain't gonna get it in the club life. I can tell you that right now. I'll be right back.